Hey, how you doing? Brian Cain, host of the Mental Performance Mastery podcast here, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome my friend Sean Brady, mixed martial artist, UFC top 10 ranked fighter, to the Mental Performance Mastery podcast. Sean recently came off of the biggest fight of his career in a dominant win over another top 10 opponent in Kelvin Gastelum. In this podcast, Sean opens up about his mental health, his mental performance training, and what the drills are that he does to create an unbreakable mindset. He talks about mental imagery, visualization, his routine, how he uses Success Hotline, Mental Performance Daily, how he refers to his affirmations and trains them in the sauna, the cold tank, as well as when he's out on runs. He's going to talk about his use of the 30-day athletes program, mind movies, concentration grids, the success checklist, and more. The dangers of outcome thinking, the challenges that you can run into if you put expectation over execution, and how to not fight to not lose or fight to win, but to just fight because you love to fight. One of the best podcasts we've ever recorded about having something to go to create an edge. Here's Sean Brady, top 10 UFC fighter. Sean Brady, thanks for joining us on the Mental Performance Mastery podcast, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brian. It's been a long time, man. I've been listening to your stuff for a while. We've been working together for a while. It's cool to finally be on one of these episodes. I've heard you talk to so many great people that I've listened to. So yeah, it's cool to be on it myself.
Yeah, especially getting you on after you went out there and dominated Kelvin Gastelum in your most recent fight, which we'll get to, man. But what a journey that it's been, for you going 15-0 when you're to start your career, and then you fly over to Abu Dhabi of all places to fight in a big fight with Bilal Muhammad and take the first loss of your career, and then we start kind of getting together and work together. So what was sort of the tipping point, Sean, of like when you were like, man, I need to get a mental coach?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like the physical has always been there, like I train like coaches. I'm like an ideal student, I don't need to be told what to do. My coaches aren't calling me to come to practice. Like I'm very motivated in my own ways and I love to train. So training was covered, physical was covered, I'm always in the gym. I'm always ready to fight. But, when I flew over to Abu Dhabi, and even before that, like you always have self-doubt, and I just didn't know what it was, and I didn't know that other fighters felt the same way that I felt. I've heard it a few times, but I would always be like, man, like, am I a pussy? Like, I know I'm not scared to fight, but then when it would come fight time, I'd have all these nerves and all these things like I couldn't control, and usually I could control them to where I'd get in there. Obviously, I won 15 times as a professional fighter, 5 times as an amateur. So I've won 20 straight fights in a row. And then I go to Abu Dhabi and man, my mind just wasn't right. Like I trained as hard as I could. I did everything out physically right, but I was having dreams that I was losing the fight and I couldn't, like usually I could like snap out of it and I could just never snap out of it. And then I remember being in the fight and things weren't going my way, which looking back, I've watched the fight and they were going my way. It was a close. I was winning. I thought a lot of people thought I won the first round. They just weren't going exactly how I wanted them to go. And then I get caught with a big punch and I was completely fine, but I didn't throw back. I was just frozen. And I kind of I kind of quit on myself because I didn't have things to go to, and I was mentally beat before I went into the fight. Walking out, like the entire fight week was just fucked, mentally I was just fucked. And so after that fight, I knew that it was time to figure it out, because I couldn't go on the way I was going.
Yeah, 2 things you mentioned there, and just in my experience in the UFC, obviously I've been blessed to have worked with guys like you and George St. Pierre and Cowboy,
Yeah.
Rich Franklin and Vitor and Michael Bisping and Rose Namajunas. And I've had a chance to work with some of the best, 8 that have ended up winning the gold. And how many of them have lost a fight before it started?
Yeah.
Right? Like George talking about losing the fight to Matt Serra the first time, Hughes the first time, Rich Franklin talking about fighting Anderson and, the fight, losing it before it started. Unpack that for a second, Sean. What makes you say I lost the fight before it started?
Just not believing in my skills, or almost like having like an imposter syndrome. Like I knew going into that fight that I was fighting the number 5 guy in the world. I started to think about afterwards. I'm like, all right, if I beat this guy, I'm going to either be, because Bilal just weighed in today for the backup for the title. He's fighting for the belt next. So I start to think about all the shit. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be next for the belt. And then like all these things just started to compact. And I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're at fight week, and then we're at the press conference, and I'm up there with all these people, and I'm like, fuck, like this is just, it was just a lot. And then yeah, I just felt like I just mentally wasn't ready. And it was just the weirdest feeling, you know. I was just, I knew I like almost knew I was going to lose, if that makes sense. Like obviously I didn't want to lose, but I knew I was going into it. It was, but when I did finally lose, it was like this weight off of my shoulders, you know, because I never lost before. And before that, I was almost fighting I was fighting not to win. I was fighting not to lose, if that makes sense. Like everyone put so much pressure on me, and I put so much pressure on myself. Like you're undefeated. Every time you win, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And I had so many expectations going there. And because I know I'm better than Bilal. I'll beat Bilal 9 out of 10 times. It just so happens he beat me the one time that I counted. But yeah, I had so many expectations, and it just weighed on me so heavy that I just couldn't hold it anymore. And after the fight, I was like, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Like I said it to myself, I said it to multiple people. I'm like, this is going to change my life. And it did.
You know, man, there's so much to unpack there, Sean. Shit, you were saying I lost a fight before it started. I'm fighting to lose versus fighting to win. And I want our
Yeah.
listeners to know, hey, there's a third option there. You can fight not to lose, you can fight to win, and you can fucking fight to fight. And you can fight
Yes.
because you love to
Yeah.
fight, and you can fight free, and you can fight in the present,
Yeah.
which you did.
And
Right.
that's where I fought Saturday.
Yeah. And talk about the difference between fight not to lose, fight to win, and just fight because you're a fucking fighter.
And just like, I think the biggest thing of all that is being present, you know, like obviously like we did a lot of that going into this. Like I was looking in the past, I was looking in the present in Abu Dhabi, I was looking in the future. Like I was thinking about all these different things besides like what was right in front of me. And this week or less than 2 weeks ago, I go out with my team, and it was just the most focused and present I've ever been doing anything in my life. Even that training camp, like I've just come to learn and enjoy every single step. And when you go in there, like I see it in guys that I train with, like we all do it, like we lose focus. But I knew for 15 minutes, I was going to be as focused as I could on the task at hand. And that's what won me that fight. And I went in there thinking like, I remember being in the locker room, and I'm like, if I lose, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to fight my fight. And if it's not enough, it's not enough. Like there's something else out there for me. You know what I'm saying? Like there will be a reason that I was supposed to lose this fight, but I knew I was not supposed to lose this fight. But I went out there knowing that if it happened, I'd be okay with it, you know, because I was going to do everything I could. But if he was a better man than me, so be it. October 22nd, 2022, Bilal Muhammad was not a better man than me. I beat myself. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's just, there's just two different Sean Bradys, and Sean Brady December 2nd will kill Sean Brady from October 22nd.
Well, and you see that, right? You see that with GSP when he fought Hughes 1 and 2 and 3. You see that when he fought Sarah, and it's really funny
that's my
right?
idol, man. So
Well,
I've seen it.
You talk about fight my fight. I mean, it's the same thing he's saying in the press conference after he beats Josh Koscheck at UFC. I think it was 74, right? In our first fight together, where he's saying, my goal is to go out there and fight my fight, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember working with Keith Jardine when he beats Chuck Liddell. I want to say it was UFC 78 in Anaheim. And I remember that morning of the fight, I'm hanging out with Keith, you know, and he's like, here's what I realized, man. Ultimate effort is ultimate victory. He goes, I don't control the outcome tonight, but I'm going to give every fucking thing I got in that cage with Chuck Liddell tonight. And he goes out and wins. And it was a massive upset at the time, you know?
Yeah.
So that idea of ultimate effort is ultimate victory. That idea of fight not to lose, fight to win, just fight to fight because you're a fighter. It's what you do. It's what you love. Stay in the present moment. Let go of the outcome and the expectation and get into the execution. Talk about, Sean, if you would, the pressure of expectation and the freedom of just execution.
Yeah, I mean the pressure, and it could have gotten worse if I didn't like do what I did, get with you, really work on myself and my mind. It could have gotten worse because I had all these expectations to win after I beat Bilal. Then I'd lose. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to fight. When we first started together, I was going to fight Michel Pereira, super dangerous guy. People are like, oh, this is a horrible fight for Sean. Then I get hurt. can't make it to that fight. Jack, 2 weeks out from the Jack fight, people were telling me I'm going to get knocked out by Jack. I get an injury in my elbow, can't fight Jack. Now I'm fighting Kelvin, and Kelvin's knocked out. Michael Bisping, he's knocked out all these guys. Took Israel Adesanya, who's a weight class above, to a split decision, almost won the middleweight belt. Knocked out Tim Kennedy, knocked out all these guys, and everyone's telling me, like, I don't read comments, but you see them. Like, I'll be just scrolling down and I'll see MMA Junkie because I follow it, and it'll say Sean Brady's getting knocked the fuck out. Sean Brady's getting this. So the expectations, if I didn't work on my mind with you and everything, I could have let all that come in and it could have made it even worse. But I went out there I'm like, I don't give a fuck. If I lose the fight, but if I give it all my effort, I don't care, because at the end of the day, my wife's going to still be there. My family's still going to be there, and my team's still going to be there. But if I go out there and I fold because I'm not ready mentally, then I won't be able to forgive myself. But that wasn't the case. And that's never going to be the case again. If I lose, maybe someone's better than me that night, but it'll never be because I beat myself.
Yeah, it's the power of IDGAF, right? And I don't give a fuck. Like, there's a lot of strength and power that comes to that, and it's freeing and allows you to compete in the present moment, whether it's in the octagon, whether it's between the lines of a football field in the NFL, whether it's on the ice in the NHL, or in a batter's box in a Major League Baseball game, right? Like, I don't give a fuck is freeing and powerful, and that's reality, right? So it's you talked about having belief. To you, Sean, maybe right now versus Sean of a year ago or 2 years ago, where does your belief come from now, and where did it come from before?
It's still then and now always comes from how hard I train and all the work I put in. But now, like, where before, like, I almost didn't, like, people would tell me how good I was, and I almost didn't believe it. I'm like, I believed it, but I'm like, I don't know. And I kind of walk around with like my shoulders rolled, and then I'd go in there and I'd maul people. But now I walk around, I'm like, I don't like being the center of attention, but I do walk around and I carry my head held high, because like I worked more than half of my life to be where I'm at now. And I worked my fucking ass off to be here. And I need to carry myself like that, and it's just me believing in myself. And yeah, I'm a great fighter, but I'm also a great person. And just carrying that aura of myself, like I'm a bad motherfucker, and I know I am, but I also don't think I'm fucking I don't like try to get caught too much in my own hype, and that's why I train so hard. So it all just comes from me training super hard, always being an athlete, and being a professional athlete. It's my job to go to sleep on time, wake up on time, eat, do all these things right 365 days a year, and that's where my confidence comes from. Whereas before, I would still do all those things, but I wouldn't believe in all of it. And now I'm just like, I know I do all the right things, so there's no reason for me not to believe in myself. There's nothing else I could be doing that would make it better.
Yeah. And, you've mentioned earlier having something to go to, the process over the outcome. I mean, how much better would you say your process is as a professional athlete from investing into mental performance than it was beforehand?
I mean, it's so much better. And it's just it made my process better, because now I have, like you said, like I went through success, just through the success check, the habit share, success hotline, your podcast, everything, like religiously, the grids, everything. And now it's just part of my everyday life. Whereas before, I'm on top of this stuff, and like I had to make it habits, but now it's just part of my life, and it doesn't feel like I don't have to work at it. It's just what I do. Even all like the mental imagery, the audiobooks, all the mind movies, it's all just reinforcing all the stuff I already do and making it just easier for me, and yeah, I'm just a completely different person.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's really cool. Really cool. And, so we go back to when you and I met, right? So you go to Abu Dhabi, underperform, lose your first fight, come back. How did you land? I never even asked you this, but how did you come across me? How did you land on us getting together?
Gabe. So I was training with Gabe. That was our first training camp together.
Yep.
And I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, dude, it was just like I was all in my head and everything. He was like, listen, he was like, and he told me shit like I didn't know. Like I didn't realize how many guys felt the same way I felt, And he's like, Lane has a guy, this guy has a guy, all these different people who I look up to. Like, I didn't know George worked with people. I didn't know all these guys had like a lot of people use mental performance coaches like you and whoever else, but a lot of guys don't. And if they do use them, a lot of guys don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
So especially in MMA. So Gabe referred me to you. And then, well, first I asked him, I said, do you think he'll be good for MMA? And he said, yeah, he worked with GSP, so I think he'll be good for you. And then I was sold. Like,
Yeah.
Gabe's the best. He's changed my career too in the way I train. But yeah, so he was the one. He said, Brian's your guy, and then it was history.
Yeah. And for the coaches listening, Gabe and I's connection, we both went to Cal State Fullerton. We both studied under Ken Ravizza. Gabe being a military guy, we got connected. He's now a strength coach, and we got connected. Never even met in person. I was there before he was. I'm older.
Yeah.
And then we got connected and hit it off. And I remember him calling me and going, "Hey man, I got some athletes that need some mental performance work. And obviously Ken's no longer with us. Can you take these guys on?" And hit it off from there, and fucking here we go. So I think that's the power of, just, again, for me, always coming back to, man, like, being aligned with Ken Ravizza has been the number one thing that's allowed me to do the mental performance work I'm doing, and he would, I'm sure he's watching down on your fight December 2nd and going, fuck yeah, that's one of the guys in the Army, that's doing the work.
Yeah. I've heard you say his name so many times. And Dr. Rod Gilbert, like, there's so many people like that I've just been exposed to through you. That's just made my life so much better,
Yeah. Talk about Success Hotline. You call Dr. Rob Gilbert. It's 3 minutes a day. What benefit has Success Hotline been for you?
Man, there's always something good. Like, there's been times where I've called that, and like, I would either be driving to practice or coming home or in the sauna, and things would just click. And it was always like something that I could take and apply to my life or my career. And I always kind of just look forward to calling it, because you never kind of knew what you're going to get. Like, he does like weight loss challenges. He does all these things, like all these cool things. And I'm like, man, this guy does this he's not a young man, and he's doing all these things. And then he's giving out info for free seminars, and to call him at this time. And he just seems like he really, really, if you want to get better, he's going to help you get better, and I love it. I call it every day. I know he does there'll be times where I call it too early in the morning though. Like, I'd call it the night before and I'd hear the same message. I'm like, shit, he didn't upload it yet. So that's how much I call it though, it's not like it's not like, oh, I have to call a Success Hotline. It's like, I get to call it, and I enjoy doing it. And it's just part of my day now,
Yeah, and in Success Hotline, something I've came across, remember clear as day, first time I heard Dr. Gilbert speak, and met him March 2006 at a Sheraton Hotel in Burlington, Vermont, at a leadership conference. And I went, whoa, this guy has a hotline where he leaves a 3-minute message on our answering machine every day. So I've been calling for 18 years. 18 years. I've met the guy twice. 18 years he's been impacting me, and then that's ultimately what motivated me to start Mental Performance Daily. And the Mental Performance Daily podcast, the sister podcast to this, 2 to 3 minutes a day. How have you used that as a part of kind of your mental performance training?
Same thing. Like, there's been so many times where you would do either like mini seminars with different fighters or just different, but it's not like a long form. Like, I can do long form podcasts, like I always do them, but it's just 2 or 3 minutes of just a little something that you might just need for that day, just to give you that extra push. Or if you're kind of feeling sorry for yourself about something, or you don't feel like training, that might be like just that little more motivation. So that I would do yours. Success Hotline every single morning, or like depending on in the day. But there was a point where I was doing those two and the Secret all just in the sauna first thing in the morning, just getting my mind right, and like I said, it's just part of my day now. It's just, if you go on my Spotify, it's just right there,
Yeah. And it's amazing for mental performance coaches that are listening to this, right? I mean, Sean is one of the top 10 fighters in the world in his division, right? I mean, this is an opportunity for mental performance coaches to hear that this fucking guy's one of the best in the world at what he does. And he's opening up here and talking about what he does from a mental performance standpoint, and just like Lane Johnson did, just like Jake Fraley's done, like, and I hope these coaches are hearing what you're saying, but then also hearing how you're doing this. For example, when you said, when I get in the sauna, it's mental performance daily, it's
Yeah.
success hotline, it's a concentration grid. You
Yeah.
have stacked habits. You're doing not just sauna work, but you're doing those and the highlight video
Yeah.
and the affirmations and
Yeah.
the mental imagery all in the sauna, probably while you're doing that. So, you know, that doesn't happen by accident. Sean is able to do all of this mental performance training in the same amount of time that most of his opponents are sitting in a sauna for 20 minutes, dicking around on Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, we've even had signs with my affirmations written down in my sauna, but now like I have them memorized, so I don't need it. But you wanted me just to see them, and
Yeah.
then like you said, I'd be doing my affirmations in the cold. I had it down to one point in my camp where I knew if I said, and this was way more than 3. It was like I think we had like 6 or 8 affirmations, and I had it timed out. If I did all 6 of them 6 times, it was 3 minutes, and I knew my cold plunge would be done then, and I would time it. But then I knew exactly how long it took me to say them, and I would just say them to myself, and I knew that I was done with my cold plunge. So
that's badass.
It's not like it's not hard. People just make it harder. Like you can make the time, you know. But like you said, you just stack them on other things you're doing. Do them driving. Do them first thing in the morning in the sauna. Like you're not doing shit anyway in the sauna. You're just sitting there.
Yeah.
So you might as well get something out of it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest differences I think that I've made in my work recently is looking at, like, asking, how long are you in the sauna? How long are you in Normatec boots? How long are you in the PBM red light bed, right? And then going, what are you doing in there? Okay, this is where we're going to do this. This is where we're going to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to help you create the trigger for when you're going to do it. And I remember, you know, back in 06, working with GSP, that Dr. Gilbert had a book called If You Want to Win Tomorrow, Read This Book Tonight. And George was like, you know, I listen to it. I'm not big much with reading. And I'm like, shit, there's no audiobook. I'll make one. So I recorded If You Want to Win Tomorrow, listen to this book tonight. And he would listen to it driving to Montreal because he'd get stuck in traffic, going to different gyms and shit, you know, and it was great because he got so many reps at it. And I think if you just look at taking the time that you have and allocating the time that you could to do some of the mental performance training, it's going to be a natural fit. Sean, I love the 6 affirmations that you're saying in the cold tank. I never even thought about that. You know, that's one where it's like, inhale, say an affirmation, as you know, and then exhale, inhale, say an affirmation, exhale. So it's like 6 breaths, 10 seconds roughly. You're going through it 3 times and you're out. Like, that's genius, bro. I'm going to take that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. And even I told it the 30, and I even had at one point I had the 30-day on there because I went through the 30-day so many different times. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we worked together for over a year almost at this point, but we never even got to fight because I got hurt twice, then my infection in my arm. So I went through your program so many times that I would just it'd be on in the sauna, and then it'd be Success Hotline, and then it would be the Mental Performance Daily Podcast, right? The short one after that, because like you said, you have a long one. And like now I just just the way we're talking, I just look back, I'm like, man, like I just have all these things that I can go to and that I use, you know. Same thing.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The 30-day program. Talk about the 30-day program. You go through it the first time, right? You go through the manual, you go through and you watch the videos and you make the notes. And then how would you hit that every single day? Like, how did you build that in your routine so you would touch it every day?
Yeah. So it's the videos, like they were always kind of like right around like 4 to 8 minutes. Some of them were longer, some of them were a little bit shorter, but I always got it in every day. And like we'd write down notes, and then you'd also make it even easier. You'd give us cliff notes of what kind of that video was. So I'd do one video, and then the next day do another video, but I'd always kind of just go back through it and look at like what stuck out that day, you know, what like if it was like the red, green, yellow lights, like what, like, or whatever I took the most, same thing out of a podcast, like try to write down whatever I took out of that the most and just go back and look at it. So yeah, I mean, for 30 days, but it's easy. Like people hear that, like, oh, I have to do that every day. It's like, the videos are short. Like it's not, and even after all that, you have the longer form on the 10 pillars that I was going through my last camp, because we went through the 30 days so many times, you know, so you make it super easy. Like there's just there's so many things you can do. It's not hard.
Yeah. It's just, are you wanting to fucking work is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you
And
want to work,
I've caught myself though too. Like I would listen to it, and by the end of it, I'm like, man, I was drifting off. Like I don't really, and I would pull it back and I'd listen to it again, you know. So I've listened to one video multiple times because I'm human. It's easy just to drift off, and or same thing, like not be present for, like you think you're present, but you're not, because then you're like, fuck, I don't even know what he just said. So I'd pull back and I'd watch it again, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, and you have to just be honest with yourself too. Like I wasn't listening to that,
Yeah.
and don't check it on your fucking habit share that you did listen to it if you were bullshitting, you know.
Yeah. Because I'm the same thing. I'll get up, get on the treadmill in the morning, and I'll walk and I'll read Discipline Equals Freedom, Daily
Mm-hmm.
Stoic, the book, The Daily
Mm-hmm.
Dominator. I'll go through my own podcast, and then I'll go, okay, when I go to check it, I go, what was the main takeaway from that? And if I don't
Yeah,
have one clear, I'll go back and hit it again. But it's all
yeah,
those are. It's not only the content that you're getting, that you're absorbing on a daily basis. It helps with the mindset, right? And helps with the 10 pillars. It's also the fucking practice of having to be present to go through it and get something out,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And that's the same thing with like the C grids.
Hmm.
Like they're hard, and you have to be super focused on what you're doing. Because same thing with that. I've gone through it, and I'm like, and I would get lost for a second. I'm like, fuck, like, and I would restart it because I lost my train of thought, you know?
Hmm.
And then I would just be super locked in. And I'm doing that in the sauna too. And it's hard, but you have to be super present, especially when you're doing 3 5-minute rounds of it.
Hmm.
Those fucking numbers are small, you know?
Hmm.
So like you're looking, and one could be staring you right in the face, and you can't see it, you know? So you have to take a step back. And so yeah, it's the same thing. It's just being present in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, let's talk about concentration grids for a second. And if people go to briancain.com/cgrid, CGRID, you
Yep.
can see exactly the drill that Sean's talking about here. And it's a drill where for a UFC fighter, Sean has 3 5-minute rounds with a 1-minute rest in between. And we create a 10 by 10 grid, so 100 numbers. And he's got to sit there in the sauna under stress because of the heat. And he's got to focus and cross off 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2 all the way through. Now, we could also simulate that where you've got to, we didn't do this, but you could do this moving forward to start training again, is you can go backwards, 99 to 0. That'll really fuck with you. And then you can, you can go even numbers, and then you can go odd numbers, right? So it's like there's a lot of different stimuluses to it. And I think as we continue to go and you start getting into these 5-round fights, right, it's going to be 0 to 100. And then then as the rounds get harder, it's going to be 99 to 0, or you know, go, so 0 to 99, 99 to 0, odd, even, and then you know, probably 0 to 100. So or 0 to 99. So talk about, like, you know, using the concentration grid to help you lock in that focus under the stress of the sauna for 5 minutes. You would do it, take a minute off, do another one. You're literally simulating 15 minutes of focus doing the concentration grids in the sauna. Did you feel like that helped set you up to be more focused for the 15 minutes in this fight, maybe compared to other ones?
Yeah, 100%. Just because my mind was just locked in, like knowing, like, all right, like I'm getting in the sauna. I have 15. I'm going to do 15 minutes of work, and I know that when I go to practice, like whether we're doing 5 5-minute rounds or whatever, like it's the same thing. Like one's going to be physical and mental at the same time, and one's just going to be mental, but it's the same level. Like I know I have to be super locked in, or else I'm never going to get through that fucking C grid, you know, and I'm just going to be staring at it, and I'm going to get hotter and sweatier, and my phone's going to be slipping. So you have to get through it, you know, and yeah, so it just taught me how to be super, super present for 15 minutes. And not even 15, I would break it down into a minute or 5 minutes, you know, just take it one step at a time, especially because when you go and fight, there's so much going on in that 5 minutes. But in between, you have that 1 minute break, but you have three coaches who are trying to talk to you. So you're trying to take in all this information. You have to be present in that 1 minute as well. So you take a breath, but you have to be present there too. So it's all about like trying to be present and be where your feet are at all times. And I try to bring that into my life now, whether I'm in my car or with my wife, whatever I'm doing, just enjoying whatever I'm doing at that moment.
One of the things you just mentioned is I come back to the corner. I got 1 minute. I got 3 coaches peppering me with information. I got to take a breath. How important, Sean, has the deep breath become for you, whether it's in that moment, whether it's when you feel yourself getting stressed out outside of the cage, or it's like when you're in the cage or in the locker room before you go? How important has that breath been to you to be able to like just reset your mindset into the present?
It's huge. Just going and we would do the box breathing. We did the 5 by 5. Was it the 5 by, like, 5 in, 5 in, 5 hold, 5 out, 5 hold again. So 4 by 5, I guess, if that's what it is. But
5 by 5. Yeah, 5.
yeah, so I mean that's huge. And I remember just going into the locker room every time I had to go to the bathroom, and I would just stare in the mirror, and I would take a deep breath, and I would hold it. Sorry, I got some mucus in my throat.
You're good. That time of year, buddy. I
My
got the
dog,
same.
I had for 3 weeks before my fight, I didn't have any taste or smell. So I was I was like shit. But no, so I remember being in the bathroom and I was just taking these deep breaths and just staring at myself. And I was saying my 3 affirmations right there. I'm like, I control what I can control. And trust my training. I'm aggressive and always moving forward. And I'm confident, cocky, motherfucking rocky. And like I said, the list used to be way longer, and I would say all of them. But you threw in that last one just to keep it shorter and just to make. And I would laugh at myself. I'm like, and that's the whole point of it, was to not be too serious, you know. And I would just stare at myself and be like do that and like let's fucking go. And yeah, but the breath is huge because in the sauna, in the cold, in a fight, if you're not controlling your breathing and you're not controlling your heart rate's going to spike. You're going to have an adrenaline dump, and you're going to get muscle pump in your arms. Your body's going to fill up with that lactic acid, and then you're fucked. You know, so
Especially
you have to control all that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think that, I love how you could rip off those 3 affirmations, right?
Yeah.
And I put you on the spot just the other day. I had a Major League Baseball player in the office, and we were talking about here the importance of knowing what to say to yourself, right? Talking to yourself, not listening to how you feel, but talking to yourself and dictating and directing your mindset through self-talk. And I said, look, I literally in the office, I go, let's call Sean, see if he answers. He might be training. I'm gonna put him on the fucking spot and ask him his 3 affirmations. And you just ripped it off like that, and then I hung up on you and I looked at him and go, that's what it sounds like. He goes, oh shit, that's awesome.
And you've done it to me. I remember I was leaving practice one day and you just called me, and same thing. So, and I was in camp, I was leaving the gym. So, but yeah, like I love it, man. It's changed my life for sure.
Talk about, like breathing and meditation, right? So the 5 by 5 box is meditation, 6 to 8 is meditation. Are you a guy that takes time and just, you've talked about meditation in the sauna, in the cold tank, but is there also like a meditative practice that you have where you'll just sit and get quiet and just sit and breathe, not cold tank, not sauna?
So now, same thing from you. I got the red light, and now I've kind of been doing it in the red light, where I'll sit there 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, however long I'm doing it. And same thing. And that one, I'm not trying to do anything like those ones. Like I'm saying my affirmations, I'm working on my breath. I'm kind of just in the red light, just trying to sit there and almost like be present, but almost like just not be present, just be in that moment of just sitting there in silence. And like how you were talking about doing the float tank, I would assume it be the same thing. Like just let my mind just kind of be free, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like practicing non-judgment.
Yeah.
Like my mind's gonna go where it goes, and I don't give a shit. And I'm not
that's
okay.
And,
yeah.
And that's what I've learned too. Like it's okay to drift off, but just bringing yourself back. Like when you drift, come back. If I'm in a round and something goes bad, that's okay. Come back to it.
Bring it back.
If my mind drifts when I'm training, that's okay. As long as you can realize that it's happening and come back instead of just like drifting and just be like, oh, fuck it, I'm thinking about my fucking grocery bill and this. And it's hard because you have a normal life and that's kind of what you do, but just bringing it back to what you're doing in that moment, I think that's huge.
That's the goal of meditation, right? The goal of meditation, and a lot of people get it confused and they think that like with meditation, I want to be able to create this completely clear, quiet, Zen flow state mind. And it's like, that ain't it. That ain't why we're doing it. We're doing it so that you recognize when you get off the fucking reservation and you can bring it back to where your feet are. Because that's going to happen when you're with your kids. That's going to happen when you're with your wife. That's going to happen when you're doing an interview. That's going to happen when you're recording a podcast. And if that happens to you inside of the octagon, that can be you losing to Bilal Muhammad, right? 100%. Versus I get in there and it happens, but I'm able to wham, bring it back. And I remember George talking about how one fight, I can't remember who it was, but I'm Thiago Alves, somebody, but he had him in like the clinch up against the cage and he made eye contact with Cindy Crawford out in the stands. And he's sitting there kneeing this guy in the stomach and he's like looking about Cindy Crawford and then he catches an elbow and brings his ass back.
Yeah. And I remember that with Bilal. I remember getting hit with a punch and I was talking to myself and I'm like, I'm fine. but I wasn't doing anything to I wasn't throwing any punches back. I wasn't trying to show that I was fine, and the ref stopped the fight. I didn't get dropped or anything, but that was my fault of just not being more engaged in that moment,
Yeah.
and it cost me the fight. But ultimately, it changed my career and changed my life forever, because now I just think I'm a different, better person.
Yeah, it's, the goal, and I think I said this to you the first time we get on a call within the week of you losing that fight, was that this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's always my goal as a coach when I start with somebody, is to say, hey, the best investment financially and of your time that you can ever make is into mental performance training. And it's going to be this injury or this adversity, whatever it is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to you, because you get that choice, man. Attitude is a decision, and you get that
Yeah.
choice to come back and play offense,
Yeah. And you've been there with me for a while. Like, I've definitely struggled. Like, when I tore my groin, like there were some dark days, and even before I got with you, I would tell myself like I was all right. I'm like, I'm all right. Like, I'm over the loss. But then I would be driving my truck and I would randomly just fucking cry. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, I know I'm not all right, but I'm telling everybody I'm all right. And my wife didn't know. Like, and to some people, they're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, but when you're me and you put your entire life into the sport, it's more than just losing the fight. It's you lose half your money, you lose your status in the ranking. Like, you lose so much. You lose all the time that you put into that training camp. I've missed so many birthdays, nieces' birthdays, nephews' birthdays, parents, Christmases, so many things for these fights. So when you put your entire life into it, it fucking hurts, and but luckily I decided like to do something about it, because I wasn't all right. And yeah, so I wanted to get better, and I wanted my mind to be right, and that's where we're at now.
It's awesome. And I think you look at the guys you're surrounded to, right? You've mentioned Gabe, your strength coach, who's also, works with Lane Johnson with the
Yeah.
Eagles. And Lane was on our podcast recently, and, a guy who's just a big mental health advocate. And here's a guy
Yeah.
who's arguably the best offensive lineman
Yeah.
in the history of the game,
Yeah. Yeah.
and captain of the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And here he is talking about his mental health struggles. And like, dude, 10 years ago, guys didn't do that shit.
No.
They
No.
didn't do that,
No.
So like, I just want to thank you. I want to thank him. I want to thank the guests that we have on here for like coming out and like demystifying
Yeah.
mental performance and
Yeah.
mental health, and being like,
Yeah.
look, we're all fucked up. Let's
Yeah.
just
For
admit it.
sure.
So
100%.
like we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna work on it, and we're actually
Yeah.
gonna have a plan that we use, like a
Yeah.
strength coach would give you a plan to get better.
And that's the problem. Like, a lot of guys, it's almost like they see it as a weakness. Like, I was at one of my teammates' fight weeks, and some guy he's in the UFC, buddy of mine. He was like, you use a mental performance coach? I was like, yeah. He was like, you like it? I was like, yeah, I fucking like it. I was like, it's helping me a lot. And he kind of just like, he was like, I don't believe in that shit. And I was like, that's fine. I was like, you don't believe in it, but I do. And I know for a fact, like, you have shit going on that you try to get, because guys, we want to try to keep it in and be tough. And I was the same way. Like, I would tell no matter what was going on, I'm fine. Like, that's my thing. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm good. But you're not good, And then guys take it to a further step, like that they're really fucked up in their head, and then maybe they commit suicide or stuff like that. So it goes even deeper than sports, But it's all surrounded by us just thinking it's not okay to talk about how we feel and admit that something's wrong, So yeah, I'm on board 100% I tell all my guys now, I'm like, yo, talk to somebody, whether if you can't afford a mental performance coach, find someone to talk to and figure out your problems.
How much of it, Sean, and because obviously we're working together, and you've got another mental performance guy that you use to for other things, right? And how much of it would you say, because you've been a pro athlete for a while, is the connection, right? Because like the connection, and I look at sometimes I hear from athletes, right? And then when they sit down with me, like a lot of times, whether it's their agent or a coach or somebody who sets them over, and they sit down, and I can tell they're a little bit guarded and they're here because they're fucking
Yeah.
told them come over here.
Yeah.
And then once we start working together and I'm like, hey man, this is what we're going to do. This is
Yeah.
what mental imagery is. This is what mind movies
Mhm.
do. This is the success checklist. This is the controllables. This is the routine. This is the breathing. This is the mindset. This is how we build self-control and discipline. And I start giving them drills and shit to do. They're like, oh, no one's giving me this. Like, how
Yeah.
much of it is different between like having like a, like, you know, someone as like a therapist and that has a
Yeah.
look, you
Yeah.
know, versus a mental performance coach who's actually giving you training and exercises and shit to do.
Like you said, it's two different things, you know, like
Yeah.
there's definitely therapists, which I've talked to, like that's a completely different, they're different, but they're the same in different ways. But like
Yeah.
me and you, like we clicked like right off the bat, you know, and I'm not just, I just don't come to you and talk about my feelings or this or that. Like we definitely do talk, like we definitely do talk a lot, but you're also, I'll tell you how, what's going on. And then, like you said, you're giving me things to do to make it better,
Yeah.
or to make, just to make me stronger and to make me whatever's going on, how to deal with it. And that's what I think is the biggest one. Not that you're going to ever get better, like your mental health is, or your mental strategies for winning or whatever it's going to be. It's never going to be 100% that, but you have to have things you can go to. And now that's what you've given me, is things I can go to when things go wrong, because you told me from the beginning, things are going to go wrong. I'm just going to give you things to help deal with that, you know? And that's what I think you did the most for me, was just giving me things and telling me it's all right that things are going to go wrong, and that other high level athletes feel the same way you do. Like if you're not getting nervous, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But don't let those nerves fucking cripple you, where they do to a lot of guys, you know. A lot of guys have gone in the fights and the nerves beat them before they even get in there. Use those nerves, use those butterflies, use that feeling in your chest and in your stomach that everyone who has ever done anything hard or that meant a lot to them in their life, they know what I'm talking about. That feeling you get in the pit of your stomach, you know? So just having things to go to when shit does go wrong, that you can get yourself back on track.
Like I did before we started recording this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, this is important shit, man. It's not every day that you get somebody like Sean Brady to come on and talk about the mental game, you know? And this is the cool part about this podcast, is this is going to hopefully impact a ton of athletes and a ton of coaches and a ton of people listening to this going, shit, man, Sean's doing this. I can do some of that, you know, like same thing with Lane Johnson, right? Being nominated for Walter Payton Man of the Year for his work on trying to help, you know, demystify and stigmify mental health. Like you guys are saving fucking lives, bro.
Yeah. Well, if he doesn't open up, then some other kid doesn't open up. If GSP doesn't open up, maybe I don't open up. And that's a big thing too. Like I've watched GSP since I was a kid, and I always just wanted to be just like George. Like I loved everything he did. I loved how he was a martial artist, how he was confident, but he wasn't an asshole. Like he didn't talk shit. Like unless you talk some shit to him, he'd say some Canadian shit back to you that was still very, very polite, you know. And George trained at Renzo Gracie's in New York. I'm a Renzo Gracie black belt. So we had these connections, but I just liked the way he went about his life. And then hearing that he worked with you, I was like, I'm on fucking, like, as soon as Gabe told me, he was like, yeah, he worked with GSP, I was sold. But if George doesn't open up to you, maybe I'm like, maybe I'll work with him, and then it never happens, you know? So guys have to open up, because maybe there's some kid out there who looks up to me and he'll hear this, and then he'll open up, and then he'll tell somebody else about it. So we all gotta help each other.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing that. And then when you win the fight and you get interviewed in the octagon afterwards, and then Daniel Cormier is going, you know, Sean, you look great. It was the best fight of your career, most dominant performance. Did you do anything different? And the first thing goes, yeah, I've been working with a mental performance coach, Brian Cain. I was more focused, you know. And like for you to put that out there in the fucking octagon after the fight, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And, you know, for every guy that does that, like you did, and like George has, there's 2 or 3 other guys that I'll work with in the UFC that literally when we work together, they go, you can't talk about this. I'm not talking about this. This is black ops, you know? And I think as a mental performance coach listening to this, right, there'll be mental performance coaches out there that will criticize me for like actually bringing you on to talk about what you're doing. Like this should be all private. And I go, and you have to know, as the mental performance coach, there are athletes that will want that. And you provide that black ops service where you don't fucking talk about it, and they don't talk about it. You do the work. And then there's guys like you or Lane or George that will come out and want to talk about it because they want to use
Yeah.
their platform for good. And not everybody is in a place to do that mentally, and that's fine. But you
Yeah.
as a coach, like I'm trying to utilize my platform and experience I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to bring
Yeah.
what you're talking about to help the coaches and athletes. And
Yeah.
it's been badass, man. So I appreciate you doing that.
Well, that's all that's what you're doing. That's what Dr. Gilbert's doing. That's what all these people were just, you're trying to use your platform for good and to help people. And I just think it's stupid. I get why some guys would want to try to keep it under wraps, but at the end of the day, nobody gives a fuck. Like, you think if like, no matter who you're fighting, they're not going to care if you. They're not going to think you're a pussy because you have a mental performance coach or you talk about mental health. As long as you train and you beat people up, it don't matter what you do because you're still that same guy, you know. But now I think you're even like, I'm more free that I talk about it because I'm like, I don't care. What are you going to do? Use it against me? That's fine, because I'm training to fucking kill you, and I'm going to keep training my mind the same way. And that's where guys don't do it, you know. And guys think being mentally tough is more reps in the gym, more this. That shit is, that's not it. That's not what it is, you know. So if it's 2020 going on 2024 and you're not working on your mental game, I think you're leaving a lot on the table, and almost could be more important than your physical, because the physical can get you so far. But like with me, it got me to the top 10 in the world and almost into the top 5, but then it only got me so far, you know. It got me far, but it didn't get me to a world championship. And that's what I want to be, as a world champion. And that's something I'm also okay with more now. Is I was so rushed. I was like, I want to be a champion by this time. And everyone has different paths. Like, life is going to happen. And I'm just okay with where I'm at right now in my career and just enjoying the process of being right here. I'm number 7 in the world, and I just fought, and I'm good. I'm good. Whatever happens next happens, but I'm not looking too far in the future, and I'm not looking behind me, just in the present.
Yeah. And as we say, the biggest day in the history of Sean Brady's career is today.
Today.
Because it's fucking today.
Yep. What are you going to do today? You know, and I live by that, man. It's just like, what are you going to do today? Because everyone thinks about tomorrow or a month from now. Realistically, you could fucking walk outside and get hit by a bus, and you're not going to be here next week. So what are you doing today and making sure you're enjoying it? Like, I was just dragging sleds down my driveway before this. I was at wrestling practice this morning. Like, I know guys who don't go back to the gym for a month or two after they fight. Like, I love what I do, you know, and I guess like I'm super lucky that I get to do that, but it's fucking still hard work. There's days where I don't want to go to practice. I'm beat up, I'm cutting weight, but I get there, I get warmed up, and I'm grateful that I'm doing what I love to do every single day.
And it's the start that stops most people, right? I mean, even at your level,
100%.
it's still sometimes the hardest thing to do is get to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you get there and you're moving, you're gonna do a little bit more, you know, and you're gonna get through it. But if you fucking wake up and you're like, I'm not going today, you lost the day. And we're all about winning the day. So you gotta get the fuck up out of bed and go win the day.
Sean, a couple more questions, man. Specific stuff that you use. Mental imagery and visualization. How do you use those skills?
Yeah. So we have so mental imagery is
Like the audio of you visualizing yourself walking to the cage, and then the mind movie of you seeing yourself do it into the highlights.
So the mind movies are great. Like, like I said, we've done 3 different training camps with only 1 fight, but I've watched so many mind movies, and it's just reminding, it's that confidence builder of it. Ours is a highlight of me, you know. So I'm watching these things, hearing Chael Sonnen talk about me here in DC and all these guys, and then it's just a confidence builder, you know. It's just a reminder of, I'm a bad motherfucker, and sometimes you forget that, you know, you get caught up in whatever. But same thing with that. I watch it before I go into the gym or in the cold, wherever I'm at. I'm always getting those in. I've even probably shouldn't be doing it, but I've watched them driving, you know. So, but then the longer form one is
the audio, the mental imagery audio,
putting myself in the locker room, even before that, getting that shower that morning, because for me, that would always be when I got the most nervous. I'm like, it's after like you eat breakfast, you do your shakeout, and then you're like, you get in your shower before you're going to leave the hotel or your Airbnb. And I'm like, damn, this shit's real now. So you see that a million. So I go through that. I go through the warm up, punching, kicking, hitting pads, rolling around my partners. Then you're walking out, and then you get into the octagon, and then just being present in there and just visualizing what I want to do in the fight. Mm. And now, even deeper than that, like you always visualize the good. I would start to visualize like if I get dropped, if I get taken down, if things aren't going my way, and just getting back into it, and eventually at the end winning the fight. So yeah, they're huge.
And there we had an audio that we would make, right? And it could be another thing to do in the sauna where it's like some relaxation, some breathing, some affirmation, and then we would literally play like your walkout song.
Yeah.
I think Gastelman's walkout song is going to be from what he's used in the past.
Announce his name.
Bruce Buffer cut
record.
from clips, him, you, and then 5 minutes of crowd noise, right? Like, so I try to make that shit as real as we can for you to go through. Like, how often were you hitting that, just seeing yourself in there for the fight, doing what you do?
At least I was doing it on my sparring days. So like my most two important days. So Wednesdays and Saturdays are our sparring days. And I would even sometimes do it in the gym. Like I'd go in and I'd put in my AirPods and I would just sit in the corner in like an Indian pose, and I would just listen to it, and I would use it as a warm up, So at least 2 times. But the mind movies are short. So I would hit them like when I'm in training camp, I'm hitting them all the time. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing that you would do for me all the time is if you see a highlight on my Instagram, like you would add it in there, So you were adding in like recent shit. So it's always getting updated.
Love that. And then in terms of like the fight day, right? The walk from the locker room to the cage. And I've had the privilege of doing that a couple of times, and I'm not getting inside of the cage, and it's like nerve-wracking, man. I mean, you want to talk about adrenaline spike, like how much, just in terms of you like practicing walking from the locker room to the cage and visualizing that process, getting in the cage and the routine of, do you circle left, do you circle right? When you get to your corner, are you looking at your opponent and kind of going back and forth? Are you putting your hands on the cage and getting water on your feet, right? Like, how much did you visualize like that whole piece? So when you got in there that night, it was like second nature.
Oh, they were like, the walkout was the most thing I would visualize, because that's when like you're like, oh, like, all right, like here we fucking go. So going from the locker room to the walkout to the cage, I did it so many times in my mind that once I did it in real life, it was like I was excited. And I remember telling you, I'm like, man, like this is like the first time like I'm excited to go out there and do the walkout and just enjoy it. And I did it so many times, so where when I came out, it didn't like shock me, where I think, like you said, you even wanted me to go. I couldn't get in there that day, but you wanted me to go and get in the cage before, and I think there's like, you can do it at your own gym. Like you can simulate it like very, very closely, but just going and knowing what you're going to do instead of being like, I don't know what to do. Like you're just like looking around. So I know like I run around. I bless myself before I get in the cage. I circle it, and then I'm back in my corner, So, but the more times you do that and you see it in your mind, it's not going to be foreign to you when it actually happens.
Couple more questions, Sean, man. Again, this has been badass. Talk to me about the success checklist, right? We use Habit Share. It's a checklist. We literally use that. Just like if I was a strength coach, I would send you with, here's the reps, here's the sets, here's the exercises. That's why we use a checklist. Here's the mental game drills to do, how often, how long they should take, what order you should do them, when you're going to do them, check it when you do it. It's no different than you keeping track of your weights in the weight room. How have you enjoyed having that success checklist that we use the app Habit Share for to stay organized with?
It's great because, like you said, all those things that I was stacking in the morning, they'd all be right there. Boom, boom, boom. Then I'd move on to the next thing. And then if you look back in the day, if you're like, shit, I didn't do that, and then you mark it red, or you mark it like you didn't do it, or that gives you a chance to go back and be like, I didn't listen to the Success Hotline, and then you can hammer it, So that's what I really liked about it, and just keeps you accountable. I think for someone like me, I think for people who have a hard time with accountability, it'd be the best thing they could do. Like I'm accountable, and I always stay on top of my stuff. But even for me, I'm like, man, I could be doing this more. And then you look back and you're like, I was up on my phone last night. I was doing this. I was doing that. I didn't go to bed. So it just keeps you accountable on all the things that are going to make you successful. If you have everything on there, your training, your food, you're this, you're that, all the things that, if you do those in that day, you're going to succeed. If you go and hit all of them, you won the day, So it sets you up for success. And like you said, it's just these little small micro things to make you win and make you succeed in that day, and just do all the right things.
Sean, we got 2 more questions here, man, and then we're going to cut you loose. The importance of controlling what you can control. How important has it been for you to just get crystal clear on what you can and can't control?
Huge, because there's a lot you think you can control, but you really can't, and that was when I tore my groin. I can't control that. When I had the staph infection in my arm, I was in the hospital. Can't control that. You just can. All I can control is the things that I do to go forward, make sure you're doing your PT, whether it's I'm in the hospital, making sure I'm doing all the right shit, or same thing with a fight. The biggest thing is you can't control. No matter how much training, mental prep, anything I do, I can't control if I'm going to win or lose that fight. I can just give my best effort and just control my body, my physical and my mental, and go in there and give myself the most success I can, and just being present, and I think it just goes into everything in life. Like if you're driving and there's traffic, you can't control that, but you can control if you start fucking road raging and punching your, like, just because we all do it. It's with everything, you can't control a lot of things, but I can control just staying calm and just waiting for the traffic to clear ahead of me, or whatever it is, just controlling what I can control. And yeah, it's huge.
Last question, Sean. It's the $1 million question. And the $1 million question I got from Dr. Rob Gilbert of Success Hotline, right? And he would say, what is it you know now you wish you knew then? And for us to put it in a little more context, what is it that Sean Brady knows now, year plus into mental performance training, coming off of the biggest win of your life? What is it you know now you wish you knew when you first started working as a professional athlete?
The biggest thing is that it's okay to be nervous, and it's normal, and that's something, like, I remember seeing all these guys, and I'm like, man, like, I remember asking people, when does it go away? It never goes away, and I remember I went out to Cowboys Ranch when I was 21. I stayed there for 3 weeks, and Cowboy, when he's in the room and he's locked in, he was a world champion, but he would get out there sometimes, and I guess his nerves would get to him. And I was kind of the same way. Luckily, I just won all my fights, and I'd always be like, fuck, like, I can't wait for this to go away. And I thought it would with more experience. It never does. But just knowing that it's okay, that it's there and you can use it to fuel you, not to fucking crush you. So that's something I wish I knew, younger Sean Brady knew, but I know it now, so it's all good.
Yeah, it's turning that fear into fuel to ignite, into light, the heat the house, right? To cook your meal versus letting that fear get so big that it burns your house down. And, I've been back there with Cowboy, man. I mean, you couldn't have said it more clear, and other guy, and everybody goes through it. I mean, Cowboy's a Hall of Famer, one of the best guys to do it. GSP, Rich Franklin, these guys have all said the same thing and talked about it publicly, so you're in good company with those guys. And, your goal is to go out there and be in standalone company just by being the best fucking version of Sean Brady that you can be. Let the outcome take care of itself, because you now know that the process that you have as the stakes get higher and the fights get bigger, the process is the same. The process works. And I think you actually have a fucking advantage the bigger the fights get, because now I was thinking about this as I was on run this morning. Not only are you fighting Sean Brady, not only are you fighting the guy who's across the cage from you, you're fighting the moment.
Yeah.
And you know how to fight Sean Brady, and you know how to fight the moment. So you got to focus on one guy. And the other guys who you're going to step in there with, as this moment gets bigger and it goes to 5 rounds, and the purses get bigger and it's bigger lights, right? Is they got to fight you, they got to fight them, and they got to fight the fucking moment. And you're going to win the moment, and you're going to win the fight with Sean Brady to just make it more clear that this is my opponent and this is what I got to do. So Sean, man, couldn't be more grateful and thankful for you coming on here to the podcast, and couldn't be more excited for the future that you have inside of the octagon and in the UFC. Thanks for being here, man. Everybody give Sean a follow on Instagram at Sean Brady MMA. Sean, dominate the day. Thanks for being here, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bri.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast with UFC fighter Sean Brady. Can't thank him enough for coming on to talk about his mental health, his mental performances, and the strategies that he's used inside and outside of the octagon for elite performance. If you are looking for more when it comes to mental performance and you're a coach, head over to briancain.com and check out my coach's certification. Join our insiders list to save $200. If you're an athlete and you're looking to work with me or a member of my team to master the mental game like Sean, head over to briancain.com and click on athletes to learn more about how we can work together today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review, give us a follow for more athlete podcasts coming out with great guests like Sean Brady. Thanks for being here. Dominate the day.